NFP Connect and I am connecting communities. And today we have on this webisode Simon Walsh, who is the CEO of Allambi Care. Hello, Simon.
G'day, Grace. How are you?
Really well, thank you. How are you?
Awesome. Yeah, good. Really good.
Yeah. In these crazy times that we're having.
Yeah, there's a lot going on at the moment, but yeah, surrounded by some awesome people. So yeah, trying to stay pretty positive actually. Like we're just planning madly and working together as a team to sort of get ourselves in a good position to care for our kids.
Yeah, awesome. So tell us a little bit about Allambi Care.
So Allambi Care has been in operation for about 25 years now. Look, we work right across the spectrum of care. So we run foster care programs for kids. We have residential type programs. We have a whole range of disability services, and we also do a lot of work now with reconnecting kids back into their family homes from those placements. We also try really hard to look at intervening in that early intervention space, so working with families and trying to prevent kids coming into care. We have a whole range of wraparound services that support that process. So we have a learning centre and an education team. We have a whole range of clinical services, which also have social work positions attached to it as well.
So how has Allambi Care been impacted by COVID-19?
Yeah, look, I think very similar to everybody. Like, I think the biggest challenge is the unknown for us at the moment. I think we have a large number of kids and young adults within our programs that require staffing, face-to-face staffing, and we're much like any other sort of necessary service where we're not in a position to sort of say, look, we'll see you next week and come back. So it's about navigating and listening to all of the health recommendations about what they're saying we should be doing and how to act appropriately to prevent spread and to prevent coming in contact with COVID-19. So it's really about how do we look at business as usual, maintain the level of care and support through a really difficult that we may be anticipating to work through.
So what have you learned or are learning through this process?
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing is for me, it's about being able to rely on the people around me. It's been a really incredible experience to know that there's a real exercise of trust, I guess, that people can actually carry out what they're doing. So like in many places, we've got people working from home. And we've got varying levels of expertise in certain areas. So it's about really drawing together, working as a team better than we ever have before, because it's really about sharing those gifts and those talents amongst your staff and who's good at what and how can they lift and prop up other areas. So I guess for me, it's been an exercise in, being able to see whether I can let go and allow staff to operate and bring to the table what they can do best, which has absolutely been the case for us. I've been really impressed. And I think, for me, it's about what's the most important bits and pieces that we're meant to be doing each day for our care, for our kids and the people that we care for. I guess we get caught up with a lot of the busyness and the grind in our work. And for me, this really highlights what's important in what we're there for and what we're meant to be doing for the people that we're attached. And, that day-to-day care, making sure that we're there, that human contact is absolutely paramount. And I think that's helped us as a team also really focus on those areas and make sure that that's actually the focus of where we're at the moment as a team. It's been quite a good. I think we'll learn a lot at the end of this process about what's important and some of the things that we can sort of shave off, I guess, as an organisation as well. So it's been good.
Have you found any good resources or support that's come through this what you're going through over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think that's been one of the really nice outcomes of the last few weeks is that from an organisation point of view or a non-government organisation point of view, I've really reached out to other partner agencies, and the amount of sharing that's going on is phenomenal. Like everyone is so forthcoming with anything from procedural documents right through to how to connect with your kids and share, resources in regards to working with the kids and trying to manage parenting and schoolwork. And, basically we've been inundated with resources in regards to people sharing. So I think, always after more, but very happy with where we're at the moment in regards to the level of coordination and cooperation from other agencies, government and non-government. People are just so willing to make sure that we're all looked after at this time, which is really nice. I mean, that feeling of safety and security is really there based on that working together. It's been really good outcome.
So on that note of like sharing and collaboration, if you're an organisation that's not used to that, and I know I've spoken to your offside of Steve a little bit about collaborating, and you guys are coming out more about with that sort of partnership, sort of and it's been seen in the movie nights that you've been holding in the park and the different collaborations that you're having.
Yeah.
You come from a place of just trying to do your stuff to now going, we want to collaborate, we want to make. How would you, or what would you suggest to organisations that haven't necessarily collaborated in the past or are a bit fearful of that?
Yeah. So what would I suggest? Or look, I think it's about trying to put aside your fears. And I think that the biggest challenge for organisations is that all of us generally at some point in our timelines where we're trying to actually get income to keep ourselves afloat. And that's probably the biggest challenge in our environment is that, all the fear from people is about, losing some of your intellect, with other services and those kind of things. Look, I think something that I've learned through the last couple of years of us actually really striving to be in this place is that I think better things come from that collaboration and that work with each other. I really truly believe that when you put your best intentions and your intentions are pure in regards to what you're trying to do for the people you're serving, then the outcomes are always far better. So I think it's important to put those things aside and those fears around those concerns that people may have in regards to losing intellect and all those kind of things, because I think what you get far outweighs in return, from that collaboration and opening up that dialogue with other people. And I think, our world, sadly, there's so much more for us to learn in regards to how do we care for people correctly and what can we do. So, I think that the more heads putting our heads together and working together as a team, we're far better off.
So awesome, and it's so good to hear, and I think it's getting better, but I think we've come out of a place that's not been very collaborative, and we've talked like being even in a regional area, very siloed. So I think it's just such an important message to see and to start clarifying and sort of breaking down that barrier and isolation that I think was created outside of our control, really. But it's a perfect time in this time where everyone's in the same boat. It's not hit or miss. We're all trying to work it out, and where we're back together now, which is really cool. So do you have any advice for not-for-profits or charities going through this?
Yeah, a couple of big things that I've learned. Number one would be bet on your people. So really go back to the front line in all your different areas that you're working across, whether that's community engagement work. You really need to learn and listen to what your people that you're working, the people that you're working with, listen to them. What are their needs? And what are their ideas? It's really incredible to see at this time of, crisis, for want of a better word, the initiatives and the things that have been born out of just listening to the people that we're serving. The same with our frontline staff. Typically for us, I find that they really understand how to mobilise, how to act quick, how to be nimble on their feet in regards to being creative. And that was one of the first things we did is we went to our staff and asked them, what are the things that we need to do to try and actually get through this? The challenge from that point onwards is about working with the government agencies. But for me, the starting point was there versus actually going to government saying, how are you going to help us through this? It was actually saying, look, here's how we're going to get through this. You need to support us. So from a strategy point of view, I think that was a really crucial part in that. Again, I probably mentioned it, but bet on your team. Like your people have got some amazing gifts. I think at times like this, you never know, like just even things like being able to work remotely and people's gifts of using computers and programming and what they can do for you and the rest of your team is phenomenal if you let people loose a little bit. So I think that that's been really important. And I think the other thing is to really do a bit of an exercise on what's important in your work. Like, what are the bits and pieces that are really necessary at these times of crisis, and what can you shave off or just leave aside, based on politics or a whole range of other things that might be, in your day-to-day business as normal. But I've been trying to live by those principles, stay positive, seek the results within, and the answers to the questions within the organisation, as well as with our partner NGOs. And to date, I think we've got some really solid ideas and concepts that are putting us in a good position moving forward to continue being able to provide care, not just for our organisation, but about how we might be able to reach out to others and look after, either sharing staff, a whole range of different things as things may get more difficult, in the coming weeks or months.
So awesome. So good to hear. So lastly, what's been the blessing that you've noticed come out of this?
Blessing that's come out of this. Yeah, look. There's a whole, but probably some of the things that I've already said. It's more about knowing that you can rely on your people. I think looking at resilience and the ability to bounce back. For me as a CEO, as a leader, it really has trimmed back what's important and made me focus in on those essential elements of the care component of what we're about as an organisation. So I think that's a bit of a blessing. I think I've had some sort of light bulb moments as well in regards, like one of the things I'd like to do when I'm finished with this is to gather a group of staff members and senior staff and everyone and look at what would they do, what would they have done differently, knowing what they know now and what we've just been through. And I think there's some real opportunities to learn from each other, and that's definitely one of my things moving forward as things slow down. The other thing is that I think it's so crucial that we reach out to our neighbour. That the simple things at the moment, like just making a phone call or touch and base with your colleagues, is so important. It really has shown everyone's vulnerabilities, being at home with our families and our circumstances, or being at home without families and being by yourself and being isolated. I think the one thing that when we get online and share with our team meetings that we're having and all the virtual sort of meetings we've set up, is that's one of the real feeling of being lost or a little bit alone, I guess, at times, has been a real important piece for us to understand and then work on how we're going to actually adapt and make sure that we're reaching out for to each other and making sure that we can actually fill those voids, because I think it really has brought out the most vulnerable in each of us, but at the same time it's bringing out the best in regards to how we actually support each other at these most difficult times as well. So yeah.
So this is a random one, and it's just based off our conversation, but it kind of brought it out. As a CEO, like, you have a massive responsibility, and the people that you serve, no pressure.
Yep.
I mean, the reality is the people that you serve in your community, in our community, are some of the most vulnerable, if not the most vulnerable. Young people, foster care, all that sort of stuff. As a CEO, how do you support yourself, or what do you do for you to keep lifted? Like, there's so many people where there's so much impact that's going to happen and it's coming. How do you keep that lift to be able to just sort of put, like, what advice would you have for another CEO to keep going type?
Look, some of it again I've mentioned, but surround yourself with good people. People that you've got to be able to be vulnerable. And let yourself be vulnerable. You're not expected to have all the answers at times like this, but you are expected to be a good leader. You are expected to make sure that you stay strong and confident with your decisions when you make them. I think that's been important. I've got an amazing family. I have a beautiful wife and 4 boys. They absolutely keep me grounded at home. And even just the bits and pieces that we're doing home absolutely helps me reflect on how do I share with other people and some of the initiatives that we're talking about. So I think, can't speak more highly about, the strength in your family life and being able to just sort of be grounded in that as well. I mentioned before, I think the starting point for me, and not just for me, but from a leadership, I'll say me, but from the organisation, is the people you're serving. I think at the end of this, if things, some things are going to go extremely well, other things aren't going to go as good as planned. But I think if you can be honest and hand on heart, know that you have put the people you're serving first, and the decisions that you're making at this time with them in mind, as well as your people that you're caring for as staff. So those decisions are equally as important as your staff, and then making sure that their families are cared for. So it's that wider group. But I think that's been the sole thing for me, making sure that all of my decisions as a CEO or as a leader, number one, I'm not making in isolation. I've got a great team around me. But number two, when I make them, they sort of acid tested against making sure that they're good for people and they're good for the people we're serving. Sort of one of those other strategies is a bit of ask for forgiveness afterwards or later. I think at the moment you've got to be nimble. You've got to make decisions, and if you can be hand on heart, know that you've done all that you can from a risk assessment point of view, and that the people are first. Then I do. I've got a greater feeling of people are better. That you will be forgiven for making mistakes at the other end as well, as long as you're actually making them with the right intentions. So
and
probably the strategy I'm working on.
And I think that's a really good point. One of the things that I often will tell someone is, where they're so hard on them because they didn't react or know how to react in a certain time. And I say, okay, did that person, so if it was me and I had done something a year ago, did I do everything a year ago, the person that I was a year ago with the mind that I had a year ago, did I do everything to the best of my ability with the knowledge that I had at that point? Because that can be hard on yourself, but that doesn't really help you, because you didn't know at that point what was going to happen or how to fix it or what was the best approach. And so that's just an amazing point, which I think is really, really valid, especially for lots of people at this time who are going, we're all going through it. There's lots of pressure that people are putting on themselves. I think that's great.
Yeah.
So thank you, Simon, for having me.
No problem. Thanks for having a chat. It's been really nice.
It's been so nice to finally meet you. But in Connecting Communities, Simon Walsh, I will put all the details about Allambi Care and how they're working to support our community. And if you've got any questions, you can just visit the details below. Thanks so much.
And look, just before I leave, if it's okay, if there is anyone struggling in the community, particularly those who've lost their jobs or finding it tough, please reach out to us. There's many ways that we may be able to help. So very happy to help if there's people in need.
Awesome. Thank you. I will put all those details. All right.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care.